And welcome back, everybody, to MMA Mondays here with the High Low Sports Podcast. We had another incredible event over the weekend, UFC 308, which we previewed a little bit last week, and it did not disappoint, at least for me personally. Two 5 round fights, neither one even needed the fifth round. Championship gold on the line between two incredibly skilled fighters and a very good main and undercard. Lots of great fights. I absolutely loved it. We're going to go ahead and get right into the recap here. We're going to go right to Max versus Ilia. In my opinion, we're going to look back on this fight and it's going to be looked at similar to what Jones and Cormier 2 was, where obviously there's a distinct winner here, but I think the amount of high level skill we saw between these two fighters was impeccable. Max Holloway is not exact. He's been around forever, but he's not washed. We have seen that. He's been electric. Ilya is just that good. I think this is more of an Ilya gets flowers than a Max. Oh no, what's next for him sort of situation. Max is still awesome. He is still incredible. He's 32 years old, not getting any younger, but he's not that long ago, he had the knockout of the year, arguably. He is just fine. This was more of a crowning moment for Ilia Topuria and establishing himself as that next dude. So I think this is going to be looked at as one of the highest level, like skill level fights we've seen in a very long time, if ever, arguably. One of the best. Ilia Topuria also, could you think of a better back to back stretch of fights? I know we've heard about this a lot, but KOing Volkanovski, Alexander Volkanovski, arguably the featherweight GOAT, KOing Max Holloway, arguably the featherweight GOAT who had been dropped once in his career, never knocked out. Absolutely incredible by Taporia. This was arguably, in my opinion, one of the best fights we've seen in a long time. Taporia still amazes me how he is a wrestler by trade with a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu black belt who is now one of the best boxers with absolute nuclear warheads. His right and left hands have a Death Star in them. And he still throws them so technically sound. The hooks, they fly. And his ability, we're seeing this shot here of Max threw a lot more high kicks, which I wanted to circle into. Tapori did a good job adapting his game plan to counter Max Holloway's long parries, how he uses his rear hand almost to parry, then set things up. Tapori did an incredible job of not only countering Max's tendencies, but he self-studied himself to know that, hey, he'd been susceptible to those inside high kicks. The way he weaves, like a lot of the boxing head movement, kind of leaves you susceptible to head kicks. And he did an incredible job adjusting to that. So I wanted to take some time to emphasize how incredible it was to see Topuria advance his game like that. And this sky's the limit for him next. Like, what an incredible performance. Very respectful in the end, too. I know there was a very interesting trash talk between the two of them leading up, but incredibly patient. Found his timing as soon as he landed, as soon as he found the shot, it was lights out. Had Max on wobbly legs, and that left hook while in the clinch situation. Kudos to Dan Henderson, who made that very popular many years ago, too. And I also want to point out the one last thing I want to add in there as well. He did such a very good job of mixing it up with those takedowns early, threatening a little bit of the back control, opening up his boxing, opening up his game, showing how truly well-rounded he is. He's not just a highlight guy who sparks people. He's not just he finds ways to win no matter what it takes. It was an absolutely incredible performance. I think he might be well on his way to establish himself as one of the best in the world. Right now, I think he's number 4 in pound for pound. You can make a case he could be higher than that really quickly. Absolutely incredible performance. It's going to lead to kind of what do we see as next for Ilya? What we did is we ran a poll on X, and here are the results too. You can see a lot of people were leaning towards Diego Lopez, and almost half of them. Not a whole lot for Volkanovski, and a little bit for Sean O'Malley, and a handful for others. But what I thought was very interesting is Volkanovski's probably going to get the rematch. Not a lot of people seem enthralled about that. I am one of them. I love Volkanovski, which is why I do not want to see this fight necessarily. He's older, a lot of wear and tear on those tires, been KO'd in 2 of his last 3 fights, and very rarely does an older fighter lose his title by knockout to a younger fighter and then get an immediate rematch and KO that fighter. I know he's had some time off, but it's going to be an immediate rematch for him, but very rarely do you see him come back and win. It's I'd love to see Volkanovski take on somebody else. Maybe if he wants to stay at featherweight, get it. He deserves it. There's no argue about that. I don't want to see it as a Volk fan. That is the thing. So I think Saporia is the next big thing. I think he is incredible. It looks like it's going to be Volkanovski, but I do like that pull. Diego Lopez is the clear cut guy at 45. Sean O'Malley would be incredibly fun. The dynamicness of his striking, his movements, how he creates angles, a lot is very unique. Kickboxing slash a little bit of karate, a little bit of taekwondo. It's a very unique stand up style versus Toporia's absolutely incredible boxing, which I want to emphasize too is he became a boxer starting as a wrestler, which is insane. And it's not like the Rashad Evans wrestler turned boxers, or the Chad Mendes or the Dan Hendersons, where it's shuffle, shuffle, overhand right, jab, jab, huge hook, feints off takedowns to uppercuts like Uriah Faber would you do. It's a true boxing stance in the way he sets it up. And he doesn't even, we saw in this one, he didn't really have a jab because of Max Holloway's length. He used his twos, body hooks, the way he just controlled distance. Absolutely incredible performance by Topuria. I've emphasized that entirely too much today, but I just think it was a world class effort. And if he continues on this trajectory, he's going to be putting himself in even more elite class of category than he already is. He's he could. There's a lot of saying like, oh, he's trying to be like a lesser version of Conor McGregor. He's imitating him too much. All of that sort of stuff. He stays on the right track and doesn't get too far into the weeds, like we'll say what Conor McGregor's done the last few years. He could be in a similar trajectory, especially on a worldwide scale, considering how big he is in Spain and Georgia and those other places. So absolutely insane performance with Topuria. Sky's the limit. I like Diego Lopez as the next fight too. I think that's the one to make. Although Sean O'Malley would be a fun fight, but I think Lopez is the one to make. Although it feels like it will be Volkanovski. Next, we'll look at Max Holloway. What's next for Max? 100%. I think he needs to go up to lightweight. I think featherweight, his body does not like that anymore. He looks drawn out. He looks a little thin. He looks frail. We look at him at lightweight. He looks. You can see like a more fullness in his body. So I want to see him move up. Looking at those rankings, there's a handful of interesting fights. I think you want to give him somebody who's definitely kind of up there in the rankings, maybe not like 1 or 2, but him and Dan Hooker, number 5 versus number 6, that sounds awfully fun. 2 really lengthy guys controlling the distance, the high pace. 2 guys you would put in that BMF category out for obvious reasons for Max and for Dan Hooker as well. I absolutely love that fight. So that's the one I'm looking for. I want Dan Hooker, Max Holloway. I would also really much love to see Dustin Poirier versus Max Holloway 3. I think that's an incredibly fun and electric fight. But I want Max Holloway to sit for like 6, 7, 8 months before he comes back. Take some time, let the brain relax and heal, get himself a chance to bounce back. But there's some really good fights for him up at lightweight where I want to see him go next. Because I think he will still pose a lot of problems. Like I mentioned, I think he is very far from done. I think there's a lot of Max Holloway left to go. And we're to see it at lightweight. I think he's going to move up the weight class and he's still going to make some noise. But next, we're going to go ahead and move on to the co-main event, which featured Khamzat Chimaev with a railroading through Robert Whittaker, ran through him in just a few minutes. He went across the octagon like he told DC, I'm going to go get him, brother. That's exactly what he does. He shoots across the octagon, that low takedown, really hard to defend. He's basically dual ankle picking. It's really hard to sprawl out from. Gets on top, mauls Robert Whittaker. I think everyone's seen the viral video of his teeth basically caved in. Incredible performance, ridiculous face crank. His grappling's at another level. 85. He looks just as fast. We saw very limited, so I can't say too much other than he did to Robert Whittaker, Bobby Knuckles, what he has done to everybody. The only thing that makes sense for him now is he fights the winner of Dreykus versus Sean Strickland. I don't think he should jump the line. I think he needs to fight the winner of that. Sean and Dreykus, I think that's the fight to happen. If it is Sean Strickland, that is not a fight I love for him against Khamzat. Granted, I didn't love when he fought the fight for him when it was Izzy, and he won that one comfortably and dominantly. So you could take that 6 and 1 and a half a dozen the other. Dreykus, I think that's a very interesting fight with both of their abilities to grapple. So I think if he can stay out of his own way, the Khamzat, he's going to be right, and he should be next in the line at middleweight. I don't want him back at welterweight. He can't make that weight. He barely makes 85. And if he does make welterweight, well, we've seen there's a bad tendency of getting sick or something happening. So he gets the winner of those two, in my opinion. What's next? Let's look at Robert Whittaker. What's next for Bobby Knuckles? Take some time off, obviously. That was just gross seeing what that happened to his jaw. Take some time off. If he stays at middleweight, that makes it a little bit more murky a little bit. I mean, he'd have lost to the top 3 guys at that point, multiple times to Izzy as well. I think if Strickland loses to Dreykus, I think that's a fun fight. Then we get that one. Maybe you give him maybe he gets Jack Hermanson, something like that. Almost turns in the gatekeeper category, which I don't love. Wouldn't mind seeing him move back down to welterweight if he feels his body can do it. Him and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson getting that rematch could be fun too, as they're both getting up there. Maybe he takes on Gilbert Burns or some of these other guys at welterweight. They're a little bit older too, but it's kind of it's a rough spot for Whittaker because I don't know if he has enough time to go on like another run like that again, like we saw at this point. But I would like to see him take some time off, obviously. And Jack Hermanson's a really good fight at middleweight, I think, with him, or even Apollo Costa fight. I think there's some interesting ones there. Maybe Brandon Allen, Marvin Vettori. The problem is he's fought so many people. He's fought pretty much everybody and beaten just about everybody besides those top few. So if Sean loses to Dreykus, him and Him and Whitaker's fun if Sean wins, or if that's not a fight that can be made, maybe him and Jack Hermanson. But either way, take some time and get those teeth healed up because that was Khamzat's terrifying. That is all I'll say about that one. But this was an incredible card. Let us know down below if you really enjoyed this fight as much as I did, or maybe I'm just overselling it because I love that main event. I think Topuria Max Holloway is going to be looked at as one of the highest skill level fights we've ever seen. And I think it's going to age like fine wine. That win for Topuria is going to age like fine wine. And for Max Holloway, I will emphasize enough, he is far from done. And we might see these two fight again under very different set of circumstances. Maybe it's a champ versus champ thing down the line. Not saying, I'm just saying, I'm not getting too far out of myself. I'm saying I think Max Holloway has enough left in the tank where the right matchups that could happen. But let us know down below what you want to see next for these fighters and what you thought of the UFC event. We appreciate y'all for joining us, and we'll see you all next time on MMA Mondays, where the next one is going to be UFC 309, John Jones taking on Stipe Miocic, a battle of goats, and I cannot wait for that one. But we'll see you all again next time for MMA Mondays.